All right. So what would be a good project to dig into? I have a tendency to like to do the more complicated projects with more milestones and more tasks, which this looks like one of your largest ones. Would you like to use this one as an example today?
Yeah, yeah. It seems like it's got more stuff in it.
Okay. So right now what we're looking at is the overall project board where you can change the statuses, you can log time or split tasks and add new tasks. So this is the very editable, fluid, moving thing while you set a project in motion. But normally before this, what you would want to do is set all your dependencies and budgets and things like that in the edit plan, which you have, of course, already found. So what we have here is a visual view of when the task should be due, but you can also move these around. So I won't save this, but I'll move it around and show you how to change the day that something's due or potentially drag it out to say, okay, I want this to be started on the 29th, but it doesn't have to be due until the 2nd.
And there's no way to create dependencies within this screen.
There is, and that's what I'm just about to show you. So the way to create dependencies is through the edit. So you've already set up the amount of hours and the budget by going to here, but at the same time you can set dependencies.
Okay. So when I set dependencies, I noticed these projects, let's say all of these are dependent on each other. And if I set dependencies on them, I notice that the blocks of time within the Gantt chart are full day blocks, even if the task itself is only 4 hours. So it starts moving my dates all the way across the screen. So if I were to do all of these dependent on each other, and let's say each of these tasks were only 2 hours long, then it would put the start and end dates on my chart.
Sure.
It'd push them out that day. Am I doing something wrong with that, or
that's actually just a default setting that you're seeing. So if I were to click on this, it would by default be the next day. But what you can also do is set the delay after 0 days, which means it's going to start after 1 day by default, and then you can go in and say, maybe we can do before 1. Let's see if this can have it start on the same day.
So I'd have to adjust it backwards, right?
Right.
So even though it's dependent, it's not because like there it says it's dependent, but it's also it looks as if it's running at the same time.
Right. What would you? What's the function of? What are you trying to use dependencies for? I guess would be a good way to lead into this.
I got the kind of the view that I wanted to see just by taking the dependencies away. But I wanted to make sure that if somebody were to start a project or start a task, that it was dependent on something. And if their previous task hadn't been completed, that it would let them know that something's been pushed back.
Sure. Okay. So then what we would want to do is, like I showed you, have the due and then the start date maybe be on the same day. We don't have minuscule dependencies like what you're talking about, where you're trying to have everything just start maybe 2 hours later. So you work on something in the morning and then in the afternoon you can work on something. We don't have that level of detail. It's more of this broader day by day dependency.
Okay.
That's a really good question.
Like your task, I mean, your other scheduler does that very well by throwing the number of hours. I can throw 5 tasks on one day, and it knows that all of those tasks are capable of being done within that day and not pushing them out automatically. I think it's just the automatic function of the dependency So this project here, instead of being able to be completed in, let's say, maybe 1.5 days, if I create true dependencies, end to start dependencies, it will push this whole entire project out.
Right, right. That makes a lot of sense. So actually, let's do a little experimenting. So we're trying to do this in a day and a half, right? So let's set that dependent on this, that dependent on that, this dependent on that. And then we're trying to make essentially everything on the 27th or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's the workaround that we have right now for something that you really want to just have start and do on just one day, or maybe this likely would actually be the next day.
And then if I drag, do they all drag respectively?
Yeah, I can't drag this one because it's actually in progress, but actually I actually might be able to drag it. So the first one that's dependent on all the rest can be dragged, and it looks like it locks down the ones that are in between.
And my main reason for using dependencies is if we do have a lot of tasks and this whole entire project is pushed back, I want to be able to just drag it a week later and not have to drag each one individually.
Sure.
And that would be my main reason for dependencies.
Okay, great. And what would also happen with your project is that it's automatically, well, it depends on how you set it up, but it can automatically push it back. So it won't say that the start and due dates are changing, but it will notify you that you're actually lagging. So on the schedule, and I'll show you on the front end what it looks like when things get delayed, you're actually going to be notified when things all get pushed back as well.
Okay, cool.
So we don't want to save this, but now we know the basic way. You would just have to do one day before. This is actually something that has been brought up a few times for smaller tasks that you're really just a 1 or 2 day project. So I'm putting this in my notes to talk to the engineering team about. So if you were to go here to this schedule, you can then.
How are you scrolling that?
I'm using a Mac right now, so I'm actually just using
Oh.
my trackpad, but if you wanted to scroll, you would use this.
Okay. Because when you first jump in the view, it seems to be all the way to the right.
Right. Or, yeah, like this, right?
Yeah, it seems to be thrown all the way over there. And then that little plus magnifier throws everything in perspective correctly, but I didn't see that thing at the bottom before.
Mhm. That's also how you scroll for the Gantt chart as well. There's a double scroller if you noticed, and
Okay.
as you might have found, you can make this a little bit bigger too if you're using a bigger screen.
Now, can you explain the status, how that works?
Right. I know you had a question on that. So the status is essentially when something has started or when you've completed it. It just lets people know where things are along a certain task. And these statuses, we're actually working on customizing or being able to customize them for premium, which you're looking at. But right now, these are the default statuses for task. So what this means is, well, in this example, Doug has accepted, meaning that he's probably started working on it, which means accept and start.
Okay.
And then accept and complete will often happen when someone is just going into this project, has both said, yes, I'm going to do this task, and it's done. So I can now log time against it.
So
And then,
if it's in a pending status, it shows up on their calendar still, right?
Right.
So what is the difference between pending and accepted? Accepted just means they're aware of it, and accepted
Right. That's
that
essentially.
they've
And
actually started it.
it's more useful, honestly, in bigger organizations where you have 50 to 100 people and designers that may not actually accept work and say, no, I'm actually just being pulled into this another project. I'm not accepting this. Whereas on your team, it's probably going to be that anything that you assign to Doug or assign to Matt is really accepted because you're talking with them on a daily basis.
Okay. And the canceled, does that cancel? I think I pressed that before and it removed the task entirely.
Yep,
Is that
and that's
because
how
I'm
it works.
administrator?
Because you're an administrator, yes, because you can do that process. If I wonder from someone who's not a manager or an admin if they can just take off a project. So that might be something that we need to experiment with. Or we could experiment if I logged in with someone else, but I don't want to mess up your project right now.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's not. I don't think anybody would be. I don't mind these guys having access to be able to do that. I just, in the future, I just want to. I could be a question, please table. It's not a huge deal.
Okay.
Now the dates on this. If I do accept and start, the dates change automatically, right? Like if we were to accept and start design criteria notes, my start date would change on that if I hit accept and start, correct?
Yes. On the schedule, it would show it. I don't believe it's going to shift. Let's see if everything has started on time and ended on time right now. If things start getting pushed back, it's not going to show a start and due date that's changed, but it will if you look here on dates on time. The planned start and the predicted start will start changing.
And are those editable fields? Like, let's say I actually did complete it, and I'm just lazy with the tool, and I make an adjustment, and I set it for complete today. It's always saying that it's complete today if I make an adjustment in the system.
Right, and that's one thing that we found with the project is that it's very structured. So if you were to come in a day later and then close out a certain task, it will show that you didn't start it or you didn't at least complete it on time. So it's taking everything very literally to when it has been started, when it has been completed.
Okay, so it's based. If we're using this, we just need to make sure that we're capturing actuals, because if there's something that's not communicated or it's actually closed out and somebody doesn't close it out, it'll look like we were late on that.
Exactly. And we have addressed that item with an activity. So for example, you can change your activity log date, but we haven't addressed it with status changes where you can say, no, actually this was completed last week.
Okay. Because when I was trying to build projects, I was trying to get a complete view of what it would look like, and I was trying to put older projects in there and kind of see as we were going through, so I could kind of see what it would look like through a half phase. But
Sure.
it was just throwing everything. Everything looked as if I was still waiting till today, so it looked like it was late.
Oh, sure. Nope, that's the way it's set up.
The budget.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely need help with that. Getting these numbers over to the left to populate and getting like this work value, the billable, and just kind of understanding, all right, where am I entering this information in at to get it to populate over into that section.
Perfect. So what I actually want to do is I'm just going to add, or let's see what I want to do for this. Since you're not on this project, I'm going to add a new task called example Greg, and time estimate 2 hours. The reason I'm doing this is because I want to show login time against a task that's assigned to you. Since you don't have it, all of these other people have their own tasks, and you're not going to be able to log time for them.
Okay.
But actually, I need to do one more thing. I want to set a budget up on example Greg. So here's how you can change your rate, and I think you've already found this. I'm going to budget out 2 hours on this. Okay. So now we have this task called example Craig. Example Greg is looking at Kirk. So now let's start the task. And there's a few ways to log time against it. The first would be to add an activity right here from this board. And essentially anywhere in the system, you're going to be adding activities to log time. So you can add a few activities. Most of your activities are going, in your examples, are going to be design work, AutoCAD files, printing things out, delivering it to the customer. So a lot of those are probably going to be notes in which you log time for.
Okay.
So maybe this is 1 hour of AutoCAD work. And what you can do in this note is you can also make it collaborative. So if you're having conversations around a project and you want to log and record that time, or you don't have to, you can say it's non-billable. You can actually pull in other people on your team. So I can pull in Doug and say, I need help on this file. HVAC doesn't look right or something like that.
Okay.
So a note can be collaborative, it can be billable time, and it can also let you know essentially what's going on. So from a project manager's point of view, you get to see what people are working on, exactly what they're logging time for, and for them, it's useful for looking back on the week, seeing, okay, what have I done? What do I still need to work on? Now, you can also log time on emails, meetings, and calls that you have with your customers as well. So let's say I'm emailing Donna. I just need a clarification on what her specs are for, or let's say her material budget just changed. Maybe they have 10 grand more and they can upgrade their sprinkler system. Then that email that you're sending back and forth, you can actually log billable time on as well.
Okay, that sounds good. I like that. That's one of the being able to pull in the email is kind of huge for us. I mean, some of the other applications had stronger reporting from a financial perspective, but that email integration.
What's currently bothering you, I guess, most about email for your organization?
Making sure that when we do have things go out, that if we have somebody out of the office and they've been communicating on it, there's not a global view of what's going on, so we've got to go over to their computer and search and try to find communication as to what's going on the project, because we had no real way. I mean, this is going to help alleviate some of that because we'll see real time about where somebody's at within a project. But if there's something lost or there's a drawing or something was communicated in email that had an attachment, everybody's got crazy ways of filing things within their own email, so this kind of helps alleviate.
Absolutely.
Search through somebody's stuff.
It's interesting that you bring up the out of office, because the vacation piece is so big when people come to Affinity Live, and it's just not people leaving for vacation and the rest of the team trying to find it. It's you, Greg, if you want to go on vacation, and being able to see what people are up to out of the office, or when you come back to get, what the heck happened for the last 2 weeks? So it really works both ways.
Yeah, it definitely helps out. I like it.
Cool. And And I like that it's all built in here within the project, and that you can actually log billable time. Would you want to log billable time against your calls and emails you're having?
There's something that we may be able to do is from so we do coordination calls, so we'd like to know how much time that call has taken. Some of those calls are generated from an email, so it's really easy to just have that information, have the data to where we don't have to create a note from scratch. The data is going to be within an email already, so
Okay,
it is helpful.
great. So I'll show you
And
actually. Oh,
a
go ahead.
lot of this stuff here, like we don't have too many emails that are pulled in just because I didn't put real email addresses for my team in the system yet,
Oh,
because
sure.
I didn't want to blow them up.
Got it. And what is Greg up to? Okay. So what we can do now is finish out this note logging. And if I were to save this, I've logged an hour. This timer can run on the bottom, but it doesn't have to. You can actually come in here and say I did this for an hour or I did this for 30 minutes. I'm not going to pull Doug in on that note. So now what we see is I've logged half an hour and it's actually filled up the money usage, but if you look to time, you can also see that I used 30 minutes out of my hour and a half remaining.
Okay.
So any questions about logging time right on this view? And then afterwards, I'll show you all the different ways that you can quickly log time too.
Yeah, there was something that you had said earlier in reference to um, needing to create a task for me because I could only log time against myself.
Mm-hmm.
So if I need to enter time, if I know somebody spent 4 hours on a certain project and I'm in the middle of invoicing, how do I do that?
Well, let's see if we can actually do this as an admin. It's not a default feature being able to log time for someone else, but let's see if we can since I'm logged in as you. From admin. Say if we just wanted to log 30 minutes. Okay, so it looks like we actually do have the admin settings, which isn't normal, but it's useful for you.
Yeah. So long as I could do that.
Yeah, what I'm saying is Matt can't log time for Doug, and Doug can't log time for Matt.
Okay. Yeah.
Which is essentially what you would like to see, right?
Yeah. Just so long as at the end of the day, if I'm here and nobody else is, and I'm logging and trying to get this project to try to get some financials on the project,
Sure.
it will be helpful. Okay,
Great.
so now that rolled over into usage. So usage and budget is on there.
So we have a per task usage budget. We have a per milestone. If you see, it all rolls up to this print for review milestone, and then all the budgeted work actually then shows the progress bar and the usage bar.
And let's say for example on this project, I invoiced somebody 18,500.
Mm-hmm.
So the total value of this project is that. How do I track against that number? Like I was thinking that number would have fallen into work value, maybe. I don't know.
What?
So I want to see what this project's value to me at the end is. This is how much money I'm being paid for this project.
Right.
And then I want to see my expenses and stuff like that run towards this.
Okay. I'm not quite sure what you're getting at. Could you ask it in a different way?
Yeah. So what I'm looking for is when I'm working on a job, I know that I'm going to make a certain amount of money. So I want to know, as this job progresses, how much of my money have I spent towards the project? And that could be in hourly fees, expenses, but an overall accumulation of work and money that I've spent, that the company spent to bring this project to completion.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
Because if I
And
go over that
that
number, I've lost money.
exactly. So that goes a little bit to our financial reporting discussion, where Affinity Live is really only focused on revenue. And if you're going under and over the expectations, essentially the budget for your clients, not the budget that you've internally set for a project. So there's two solutions to this. One would be on your QuickBooks side to then put in all the cost information and do more of the revenue analysis on the accounting side. The second is something that we're actually working on, is something called the contractors module, where we'll start introducing expenses for your team. So essentially contractors is, okay, they're charging your customers a certain amount, or yourself, and then they have their own internal expenses. That's something that will start to leak into this project, where it's not only contractors, but it's Doug and it's Matt and it's other people on your team who have associated expenses with them. But the short answer is right now, no, we don't have that in Affinity Live.
Okay. And if it were to come to Affinity Live with the type of program that I'm under, would that automatically be included in that?
Very likely, since you're on premium, I don't foresee that being anything above it.
So where it says expenses, if I had travel expenses associated with this project, since it's out of town, I can enter those expenses, correct?
You can, yes.
Okay, that's what I thought. I thought I saw that ability to do that.
Yeah. So you can both enter reimbursable travel expenses for your side, as well as materials, essentially things that you're sending to them. So say, do you print off maybe a packet for them? I know you send them AutoCAD files. Would that be something that you want to include?
Yeah, okay. So some AutoCAD files, or sometimes we print so we can review the design here also. So we do go through a lot of printing fees that would kind of like to see that. What I'm thinking about is if this can tell me how many hours a person worked, I could almost enter them as an expense towards a project, and I can see an overall expense for them still.
Oh, that's an interesting thought. Yeah. If they have fixed expense for the amount of hours that they're working, that makes sense.
Okay. That might work.
Yeah.
I guess it just depends on how hard it would be to see, like let's say right now, how hard would it be to see how many hours I've tasked somebody with this project?
Right.
Would that be a timesheet report, or?
I'm trying to think of the best way to view it. I think timesheet would be useful looking back on, but not looking forward on. It might be a scheduling function to start looking at that, but scheduling doesn't have any nice way to export or do any analysis on. So we'll take a look at that towards the end, after we figure out the whole time tracking piece of this.
Okay.
So I'm just want to jot down number of hours per person per project, essentially. Okay. We'll look into that shortly. So now that we showed logging time on the actual project, there's a few other ways to log time, and especially for the designers on your team, this is two features I'm about to show. Both the quick add timer as well as the task board is something that they really like to use instead of getting into the nitty-gritty of the project itself. So the first would be adding a timer. And you can actually add a timer from anywhere in the system. So let's say I'm just randomly on this integration page. I can actually add a timer here. And you don't have to even put any information in it. You can just start the timer.
Okay.
And minimize it while you're either clicking around Affinity Live, but most often if you're hopping to other programs and doing your work. So this is helpful, so they don't have to go in, search the project off the bat, and then start the timer. You just start the timer, start doing your work, and then fill in the information later on.
Yeah, that's helpful.
And once you complete the timer, then it's going to hop into a no email, meeting, or call. So we found timers both very useful for designers who just want to start doing their design work, but also when someone calls you up and if you want to record the call or track how much time it's taking you, those are really the two best practices for the quick add. So you can say I did design work, and then what is it against? That was the Infero project, but who was it for? WW Gay. So you can dig down into the different projects and then put it against it.
Okay.
What we're also finding is that the design team really likes the task board. So remember that task that we said, the example, Greg, on the project, it's now here on something you need to do today. And we have an hour 30 left on it. And I can actually come in here and add activities here as well, just like from the project board. So I did another 30 minutes of work. And then you can also change when you're working on it. So I know we're talking a little bit about looking at your overdue tasks or looking at what I need to do today and tomorrow. This is a really quick way to prioritize what to work on at any given time. And what's really nice about this task board is that it's going back into the project plan and updating you or whoever else is managing the projects when people are working on things and what time they expect them to be completed.
Yeah, I like that. This is pretty usable.
It looks a lot like actually self-managed projects. So I don't know if you're familiar with Trello, but it's something that I've used a lot just personally. And when I saw this, I thought, oh, great. And this is all tied back to this really nice, complex, I guess, but thorough project plan. And it's just this simple view. It's really clean.
And the no deadline, those could be like backlogged issues and stuff like that. Is that kind of what that has?
That or a project that has been committed, but no one's necessarily been doing any work on, or you haven't set dates, or you haven't had that initial kickoff call with your customer to determine when things should be due.
But those won't interfere with scheduling. We can just visualize that they're
Exactly.
And there's really, is there another screen that shows no deadline activities?
It does, and that's the team schedule. And I guess a backlog would be actually the right term. So any questions about the quick add timer or the task board?
Nope.
Okay. So I think the good next step would be to hop into the team scheduling.
So this screen I messed around with quite a bit. I like the overall feel from overall looking at like a week view. Do you have anything that looks out further than that?
So what we have is the weeks, and if you want to change it to February or March, you can then scroll through the months.
So I could still kind of see what somebody's, so that would be like 30 hours worth of tasks that I have within this week. And if it's over 40, I know they've got a pretty decent work week ahead of them.
Right. So that goes back to, I know you're looking the ability to overbook time.
Yeah.
that's really where you can start managing that. You can overbook time, but then you can pretty clearly see on the days or the weeks that, okay, it's 8 hours or 9 hours.
Okay, yeah, I like that screen.
And there's something else that I wanted to look at. Okay, we don't have any filters. There we go. So we can start looking at by due date or empty, which would most likely be those no deadline tasks.
Okay.
So that's where you can start looking at your backlog.
See my backlog there, yeah. Because if I'm not using the filters, all of those tasks lined up, and I really don't even have a tenth of the tasks loaded right now. It's just, it would be, that list could be enormous.
It can, and that's why we have predefined filters in which you can save. So actually, let's go empty and save. Oh, interesting. This might actually be a different filter. I'm going to look into this. The filters actually just came out a few days ago, and I haven't had a chance to play around with it.
Yeah, because I was looking to see if there was, because I do remember I think it was on one of the webinar things where it says where you can save those, but it didn't give me the option to do so.
Okay. We actually just released this a few weeks ago, so we're consistently updating it.
Since I've got another call at 2:00, can we run over into what this app product does do from a financial standpoint for reporting?
Yeah, sure. This is probably the closest we're going to get to the financial reporting side, where we can look at a per staff and see how much billable time and non-billable time, and then overall how much amount. So let's move this to, let's see if there's anyone. I guess Greg, you would be the best example, or we can see the total amount.
So is billable? These are only things that I've entered in there. So if I was on a task for 4 hours and I only put 10 minutes on there, because it's only going to transfer stuff that I've done an activity for.
Exactly. So it's looking retrospectively back in time for financial reporting. This is not looking at, okay, Greg is going to bring in this amount of money in the next month. This isn't forecasting. This is looking in the past.
Okay.
And you can also do custom ranges. So I want to see how much he brought in last month or this month or any sort of range. And like I was saying, or for the number of hours per person per project, this is where you would then want to look at the timesheet report. For per person, then you can see per project. What we can also do is filter it down by specific projects. So I want to see all the work that has been done for WWGay and an amount that's been done for it for any certain range of time.
Okay.
Any other questions about the timesheet report?
No, what about the dashboard? Let me see if there's something on.
Yeah, the project dashboard.
That was it, yeah. So this project value, what is that? Just what's billable?
It's how much we've already billed for it, and then looks like you can't invoice for that much.
So these are invoices that I've already been paid on. So I imported this from QuickBooks.
Okay.
And these were invoices, and they're If we could go into one of those.
Yeah, I'm going to go into the Dominican expansion ABC. So 2,500 is what is actually in the project, and then invoiced is how much that you've charged for this specific project.
But I've also been paid for that.
Right.
So when I do get a project and I pull over an invoice from QuickBooks, I thought I would be able to convert that into a project from an invoice.
Okay.
But I wasn't able to figure that out.
Yeah, I don't think you can go that way about things. Let's see. This is Swisher National invoice for 31,435. It is applying to, right, so this invoice is applying to this project.
Okay.
So you've referenced it to this project, which is exactly what should have happened, which is great. What are we looking for the next step from this invoice?
I guess so. This is something that I've invoiced and been paid for. I guess that's just where I want to see where it's giving the value of the project.
So what normally you would be able to see in the project scoreboard or the dashboard here is the total value of the project. So what normally would happen is the total value would look something like $4,000, and then invoice, if you incrementally invoice, it would be $10,000 for the first phase, and then 20 more grand for the next phase, and then you're slowly invoicing up to the total value of the project.
So this project here, for example, was, let's say this one here's probably about $120,000 project, and I invoiced for a partial amount of it.
Right.
So what I really want to see is that this job is worth this much, and I've received a certain amount. And I guess that the tools that we have on the application don't have that ability, or I just wasn't sure whether I was entering it incorrectly.
So if this is a $120,000 project, what you would want to do is, in this project plan, make it a $120,000 project. So instead of the 40 hours for the field survey, make that a higher rate. So make it $150 an hour, or make it, more hours, and then build this project plan up to $120,000, and then you're going to see $120,000 sitting on top of here instead of 2,500.
So once I build the whole,
does that make sense?
I'd build the whole plan out first, and I would make it $120,000 project based off of that.
Right.
All right.
Or what you can do to cheat while you start things off is define a price for $120,000, and then you'll see it show up on that project scoreboard.
Okay.
So I know you need to hop off now, so I don't want to hold you to anything else. Is there anything we didn't touch or you'd like to follow up on, and maybe an email?
How I assigned that one, I assigned an invoice and I assigned it to the wrong company, and I couldn't reverse that without deleting my whole entire project.
Okay, so you signed invoice to the wrong company, or was it the project to the wrong company?
I assigned a invoice to the wrong company, so I imported it, and then I went to the invoices, I searched for the invoice, and then it said relocate or something like that, and I relocated it to a project, and it was just the wrong project for that company.
Sure.
But so that was just something, but I'll have to catch up.
Okay, sure.
And I'll figure it out. I should know by the end of my trial. I'll know if this is the right, because you guys definitely have some other features that I like. So I will let you know if I have any more questions.
All right, fantastic. So, yep, it looks like we have 3 more days. So, if you just want to give me a ring tomorrow, the day after, go through some last questions before signing on, feel free to do so.
Okay, sounds great.
All
Thank
right,
you
great.
very much.
Absolutely. Thanks for your time as well.